Hi, I'm Patrick Jordan. I was born in Chicago, Illinois, August 1st, 1945. And I grew up for the first 8 years there and moved out to California in 1956. And we moved to the San Fernando Valley, where I grew up, and attended Alemany High School. And by the time I graduated from there, I was actively involved at the beach scene. We were surfing, as much as possible out in Ventura County and down in the South Bay. And we formed a rock and roll group, garage band, and played at the schools around, parks and so forth, and had a great old time. And this is about the time that the Vietnam War was heating up. And I went to junior college at Pierce and took up business classes. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and my dad suggested to get into real estate because that was what he was in, and he thought I could, if I didn't want to do the selling part, I could do other parts like finance and appraisal and so forth. So we started out there, and I had absolutely no interest in real estate classes, and the Vietnam War was getting hotter and hotter. They started thinking about drafting, and then they started drafting people, and I decided I better get my act together and either get some good grades or I was going to get drafted. So I didn't get any good grades, so I ended up joining the Navy. Because I love the ocean, for one thing, and plus my girlfriend, who I was going with at the time, I thought if I joined the Navy, I'd be stationed in San Diego, being close to Los Angeles, and I could come home on the weekends and see her. So that was kind of like my mindset at the time was be close to my girl, be close to the water, which I love, and basically try to stay out of Vietnam is what I tried to do. And so I ended up, on the day I was supposed to ship out, I thought I'd be going to San Diego, but they had a meningitis epidemic in San Diego. And so I went to Great Lakes. And I was guaranteed a school because I was studying for this test that they give you to get into the Navy. And I did really well on it, so I was guaranteed a school right out of boot camp. But the problem was that the only schools that were open at the time were Dental Tech, Hospital Corps School, and I think it was Gunnery Sergeant or something like that, or no, it's Quartermaster, I think it was. And so I didn't want any of those, so I went out and said, no, I don't want any of those, and talked to my folks. And my dad says, well, why don't you try Dental Tech? And he says, probably all you'll be doing is making false teeth or something like that, and you won't be involved with combat or anything. And so I said, yeah, you're right, So I went and told the guy who was in charge of this test, and he said, yeah, he says, we could put you down for Dental Tech. But he didn't tell me at the time that the automatic second choice was, since you're in the medical field, is hospital corpsman. So I didn't really want to be a hospital corpsman because I really didn't like hospitals and I didn't like doctors' offices. And it's kind of ironic, as you'll see further down the line, how my whole life changed at that very moment. It was when I went into that guy and I said, I want to do Dental Tech. And from then on, my whole life was slanted a completely different direction than I ever thought it would be. So, needless to say, I didn't go to San Diego. I went to Great Lakes for training, for both boot camp and Hospital Corps School training. And at the time I was at both places, during boot camp and Hospital Corps training, especially Hospital Corps training, I was still involved with playing the guitar, which has always been kind of my comfort zone, is when I'm depressed or if I'm not feeling good or anything, I pick up the old guitar and play it. And then people always seem to want to hear the music and want to hear the singing and so forth. And so when I was at Great Lakes, I had a friend there who I'll show you some pictures of later that played guitar too, and we wrote some songs together. And we'd go out on the weekends and go into town and play at the beach, just gathering crowds, and picking up chicks and so forth. But we spent a lot of our time just playing guitars, and when we weren't working and in the hospital and so forth. So when I got orders to Vietnam, I had to go through that special training for field medicine, and from there I was shipped out after going on a little leave back home and say goodbye to everybody, because I'm going to Vietnam type thing, which was kind of an emotional time. We went to back in, I guess they sent us to San Francisco.
Pat, before you go any further, can you tell me a little bit more about what it was like when you went back home and you saw your folks, and maybe you saw your girlfriend too, and talked to them about going to Vietnam? What was that like, and what happened?
It's kind of an interesting time. I was engaged to get married, and this was before I actually received orders to go to Vietnam. And I knew that something was going to happen because I had already they already told me I was going to have to either go to a ship or go to Vietnam. And at that time, I came back home. This was like in August or September of 1968. And so I told her that I was going to be getting orders, and all of a sudden her attitude started changing, and I ended up breaking off with her. And it's probably a doggone good thing I did, because I wouldn't want to have been married or else even be engaged when I was in Vietnam, because I'd have that extra weight, hanging on my head. But my folks, they were shocked and overwhelmed when I told them. And I remember exactly where I was. I was laying on the couch, and they came in and said, well, did you get your orders? And I said, yep. I was going to Vietnam. And I could see their expressions, they go, oh no, So...
Brothers and sisters?
Yeah, they all, they were all there, and we're a very close family, and so they all were upset, and I just felt like, I might not come back, I might not make it, because corpsman, I don't know if you've heard anything about the life expectancy of a corpsman over there was very short. In fact, the corpsman that I ended up replacing was killed when I finally went over there, and I took his place on the artillery base where I was first stationed. And then when I made senior corpsman, the platoon corpsman that replaced me was killed. So that just kind of gives you an idea of how lucky I was to make it back. So I knew that, the odds weren't very good for a corpsman, and I think my folks did too, and so it was rough leaving. So I basically shipped out. I went to Los Angeles, to San Francisco, then to Okinawa, to Vietnam, and I landed in Da Nang at the Air Force Base in Da Nang, and then this was in New Year's Day, basically New Year's. It was like maybe the 3rd of January. I shipped out New Year's Eve of 1968. So I was in the air when it turned New Year's. So I actually had 2 New Year's Eves, crossing the date line. And we were in this big old Continental, I think it was Airlines, going over there. And So I was there all of '69. I came back actually December 23rd of 1969. And they wanted to give an early out for Christmas, basically, so you got to come home a few weeks early, which turned out to be really good. So my first experience was, looking down, seeing how Vietnam looked from the air, and landing at Da Nang Air Force Base. And then they picked me up there and brought me into this kind of a headquarters where they would assign you to a unit. And so I went up there hoping that, maybe they'll give me a unit that's not out in battle. Maybe I'll be like in Da Nang area, or in one of the rear hospitals or something like that. Crossing my finger. But the guy says, well, we got this opening out there on 1st Battalion, 7th Marines on Hill 65. I'm going, where's Hill 65, So he kind of shows me a map, and it was a bigger map than this. This is kind of a smaller version of it, of the map. This is the one we ran patrols from. And he says it's right along the Lynn River, about 25 miles southwest of Da Nang. And you'll be on an artillery base, and you'll be replacing another corpsman and running patrols off of that base. So I said, okay. So he says, well, wait here, and I'll give the guys a call, and they'll come out and get you. The other corpsman will come out and get you in a Jeep or something, so. So I waited, and finally I see this group of characters come up in a Jeep, and this was supposed to be my initiation, I guess, into Vietnam. So they come up, and they're all in bandages from all around them in their head, and they put like fake blood, and they're carrying their M16s, and they're like got blood all over their shirts and everything, and I'm going, what the heck? And they said, yeah, we were in an ambush coming over here. They're really serious, and I'm going, oh my God. And I was just about ready to die at this point. And so we went initially to Hill 37, which was the battalion hill. That's where the first, where we have the battalion aid station, and that's where the battalion commander is and so forth. And we were initially went there, and then from there I was shipped to 65, which was the artillery base. That's where my first place was that I served in Vietnam. So when I first went to Hill 65, the same guys, they on the way to Hill 37, they have to lock and load. They play this big thing like we're going out into enemy territory, and they're all looking around. So finally, it comes out that it was a big joke, and they started laughing. They said, "Well, welcome to 1st Battalion, 7th Marines." I said, thanks a lot. And so we got to 37. I spent a couple days there, then to 65, and the first place they put me was in this bunker down below. It had stacks of sandbags all over it on the roof of this bunker, and then the guys would sleep inside there. And it turned out they put me in with all black guys. And I don't know if it was part of the initiation or what, but usually they try to mix it up or put, but they put a corpsman in with a bunch of black Marines, and they kind of look at you as you're coming in, and they didn't really want a white guy in with them, because they had their own little deal going down there. And so I had absolutely no clue what was going on. And I sat in this bunk, and as soon as they found out I was a corpsman, the whole thing changed, because they have so much respect for corpsmen that their lives are dependent on you, So it started out, I was getting like the cold shoulder, and they didn't even want me there, and it was, they didn't even talk to me. And as soon as they found out I was a corpsman, they could do nothing more than to help me out, do anything for me. So I spent the first night there, I think, so they could find another spot for me out in the on another part of the hill. And I just remember it being so hot and dark. And I woke up in the middle of the night and there was this big old rat sitting on my chest. I'm going, oh no, get away. And then, you could hear him scampering around in there. And so then the next day I got out, and one of the other places on 65 was more of a normal, it wasn't a bunker, it was just plywood sides with like a canvas top over it.
Hooch.
Kind of a hooch, they call them, yeah. And so I spent the rest of the time it wasn't as protected, it wasn't a bunker where it had sandbags all around it, but at least it was cooler, and you could open up the sides and get air circulation and stuff. So what happens is you're assigned to a platoon. I was the first platoon, and this was an artillery base, so we'd run squad patrols off that artillery base with the Marines. So there's one corpsman per squad, and you'd run down the side of the mountain, down into the paddies, walk along the sides of the dikes, and set up a checkpoints, and you set up a perimeter and watch. You're basically trying to protect the base from anybody coming in. So my very first patrol, I go out there. They give corpsmen a 45. That's what you're allowed to have. So you get a 45, and you get a Unit 1, which is the medical satchel. It has bandages and morphine and stuff in it. And then you go on patrol with the Marines, and they have you're kind of like in the middle. If you stretch out the squad, maybe there's like 10 or 15 guys, and you're in the middle, usually in front of the radio man, and then the officer is in back of the radio man. So it's like the three of you have 45s, and guess who the VC like to snipe at first is the guys with the 45s, because they're the ones that either are the leadership or the medical or the radio, so those three people they try to get rid of, and that lowers the morale of the squad. And so my first patrol was basically down a dirt road, and we get out to a field, and we get ambushed. And we rush out into this field, and we're pinned down on three sides, taking fire from two tree lines and also from this village that we were walking through. And this wasn't that far from our base. It was just like maybe a half a mile to a mile from Hill 65. So the VC are very active in the villages, and they just have fun. They go out and shoot it at the squads at night. That's what they do. So we were on that behind a bunker, and we had some Arvins with us who were the North Vietnamese kind of volunteer force. It's not not North Vietnamese, I'm sorry, South Vietnamese volunteers. So they're not the full-fledged army, but they're more like protection for the local areas. And we had some of them, and it turned out that they weren't worth a bean, hill of beans. And I remember seeing them, they were cowering down behind these bunkers, the rice paddy dikes, and we were pinned down. And all I had was a 45. I'm sitting like this, shooting that 45. And, everybody's also shooting machine guns and M16s and stuff. And so we called in artillery from our own base. They were shooting. They had to probably shoot almost straight up to come down and hit these tree lines and stuff around us. And we ended up getting out of that okay and getting back to the base. And the first thing I did was check out an M16. And I took my 45, put it away. I looked just like a Marine. I had an M16, a bandolier of ammo. I took my medical satchel and put it inside a C4 ammunition packet, and that's the way I walked around. They couldn't tell me from a Marine after that. So then the rest of the time, it was either you're on or you're off. It's if you're off, you're either sleeping, or one of the duties that a corpsman had on the base itself was burning the, I don't want to use the word, but it was the, from the excrement, so to speak, from where people went to the bathrooms in these big outhouse type things that they set up. And it gets into a big half cut off bucket, and they pour kerosene in there and set it on fire. So we had to recruit Marines to do that, but we were in charge of sanitary things on the base, so we had to recruit. They never liked to be recruited for that duty, burning it out. But and then we'd have when we were on the base, the food was pretty good. It had, they had a chow hall, and they had regular meat and a lot of Jell-O. I don't eat Jell-O to this day because of it. And then when we go on operations or that type of a thing where we're gone for a period of time, we would have to take sea rations. And the sea rations were in cans, and they were pretty heavy. So when you pack, they say you're going to be gone for a week or something like that in an operation, you'd weight down your pack with all these cans, and it would get really heavy. Plus you had to carry like 5 canteens of water because you get dehydrated really easy with temperatures like 110 degrees, 115, and humidity like almost 100%. So we'd go on these operations around the Hill 65, and one of the operations was Oklahoma Hills. In fact, let's see, do I have that magazine? Well, this magazine I'll leave too for you to look at. It has some of the operations that I was on, Oklahoma Hills included, and some of the articles about it. But Oklahoma Hills was one where we actually were sitting along the road, and we were supposed to guard the road because they were setting up a forward artillery, or taking some of the artillery from our hill, 65, and doing a forward artillery base so they could start shooting into Laos or Cambodia. I can't remember which is the one that was closest to us, but we were right on the edge of that. And we were sitting out there on this operation, running different patrols, squad patrols, and all of a sudden one of the groups saw some NVA crossing the river, which was the Lin River, the big river that runs through that whole section of around Da Nang and outside of Da Nang. And this was a big deal. And they caught these NVA basically red-handed crossing the river. And they called in, I don't know if you heard Spooky, which was a C-47 that had like a Gatling gun on it that fired so many rounds per second. I don't know how many, I can't remember exactly. But it filled the football field with 50 caliber rounds in a matter of a minute, just completely blanketing the area. And you'd look up at night and you'd see the tracers come down it with like a solid line of tracers going down and hitting. And so they caught these guys, I guess, crossing, and they were supposedly wiped them out. And I never saw a body. On the next day we were supposed to cross and go after them. And what they do, they're very good about picking up their pieces and moving on, and burying their dead or something, because I never saw any sign of them. And they say in these articles that there's like 400 dead or something like that. I didn't see them. But anyway, we went on this operation to chase them down, and they had on the other side of this river, they had massive tunnel complexes, and they were able to go down in there and trap you as you go by. They trap like half of you would be on one side of the tree line, half of you would be on the other side, and they'd pop up in the middle, start shooting at one side, then you'd be firing at them, and some of our guys would get hit, and vice versa, they'd be firing. So it'd be like, they'd be really tricky that way. And that's how the guy that replaced me was killed. he was involved in that particular operation that Oklahoma Hills, and he was pinned down trying to patch up a guy and got shot and was killed. The other thing that happened, I think it was at the same operation, was we were on line sweeping. They call it a sweep when you're all like lined up and there's villages and you go online and you sweep the area and try to flush anything out that's in there. And they go through the villages, and some of our guys ended up looking and seeing some souvenirs. You know, they'd see like a Viet Cong bandolier of ammo or a hat or something. They'd pick it up and it would blow up. It would be booby trapped. And so all of a sudden I'm walking along there and I hear, "Corpsman up, corpsman up." And of course, you know, the corpsman has to run in and patch them up. And this village had straw all over the ground, and I saw these guys all bloody and stuff, and I'm running over to them, and all of a sudden my leg goes down into this hole. And what it was a booby trap, and it was supposed to blow my leg off. But for some reason, I had enough time to get my leg out and just fall forward, and it blew up. And it threw me like 10, 15 feet on top of the guy I was running to patch up. And he goes, "Are you okay, Doc?" And I go, "I don't know." You know, I was like, I'm feeling around to see if there's any blood, and it seemed like I was okay. So I ended up patching him up and patching some of the other guys up. We put him on the medevac chopper and get out of there. And
You weren't injured at all?
well, it turns out, I didn't even know I had a piece of shrapnel, but it turns out years later, I went in for I had a bad back and went in for a x-ray, and he says, "You've got something metallic in your rear end." And I didn't even know, because there was so much, when you're in a firefight or you're in a situation where there's a lot of explosions and stuff going on, you know, you don't think about it, and if you just get a scratch, a lot of guys would turn it in as a Purple Heart, but if you get a scratch or anything, I felt it was unlucky to turn it in, you know, because I thought if you get a Purple Heart for some small thing, that, you know, you're going to get something big happen to you. So I didn't even know it. I know that I had my pants were all ripped and bloody and stuff, but I thought it was because of the, you know, I was thrown that far, and I'd been patching guys up all day and got blood all over me and stuff. But it could have been that little piece of shrapnel in my butt, you know. So that was the hairiest thing that happened as I stepped on a booby trap. But there was other patrols and operations that we were on that it was remarkable that I survived, because the guys like right next to me would get hit and I wouldn't. And you'd wonder why that would happen. Why would the guy right next to me get around and I didn't? And then, you know, that happened a number of times. And you start thinking, you know, God's got to be watching over me, you know. And it really was a conversion process. I always believed in God and that He was with me, but it was just like, it was so raw, you know, so right there, that it affects me to this day, you know. That, you know, why did I come back? You know, what was my purpose and so forth. And like when we go on these retreats and we think about things like that, and what were the major parts of your life that changed you, or, you know, why are you the way you are? And I always look back at Vietnam as being the major turning point in my life, as far as my faith being stronger and making me the person that I am, you know. And I don't know, I still don't know, you know, maybe it's because, you know, I raised a family and, you know, married a wonderful woman, and we have good kids, and maybe they'll turn out to be president someday, who knows, you know. But, you know, all you can do is the best you can in the life, so. But anyway, that was a major turning point, was that experience of life and death situations, and why you make it and why somebody else doesn't. So from there, from being in the field for 6 months, they rotated me to the rear. They don't like to keep corpsmen out too long because it's such a high pressure job, and like I say, the longevity of a corpsman isn't very long.
Is this after the helicopter incident?
No, the helicopter incident was something else. That was one of our operations that we had to basically try to find. They were getting rockets fired from this hillside, and part of this you could see is this green area is all mountainous and hills. They call it Arizona territory, and it's kind of like the Wild West. It's very down below is all rice paddies and tree lines and villages and so forth, and then a river, and then up above there's all these mountains and various hills. And it turns out that there was we didn't know if it was an NVA or a Viet Cong camp up there, and they were pretty much identified it, so we had to go and check it out. And one of our squads on the way up this hill, or in this like pathway going up, they were ambushed, and one of the guys, I guess, stepped on a booby trap or got shot, and they called in the medevac chopper. So on the side of a hill, and this chopper was coming in, and as soon as he got very close, he got fired at from these NVA or VC, and they hit the chopper, and the chopper peeled off and went back down and crashed into the rice paddies. We were the lowest, our squad was the lowest going up the hill. We were supposed to go down and rescue these guys that crashed. And we wanted to get there before the VC could kill the guys or could take the machine guns and so forth off the helicopter. So we rushed down the side of this mountain it took us most of the day to get up. We're running down, and then we had to cross through the rice paddies that the water was, I remember it was at least up to my waist, if not higher, and the mud below that. So we were kind of like squishing through this area that was, we're out in the open, and we finally got there without taking any incoming or anything. We got to this chopper, and there was fuel spilled all over the top of the water, which could have ignited at any time. So we were walking through this stuff, trying to pull these guys out of the chopper that were still alive. And then there was a small, like, little island in the middle of the rice paddies, and we were able to pull the guys up there, and I was patching them up and trying to figure out what to do, and a lot of them were the kind of injuries where they were mangled. They're like the one guy I remember in particular, his whole jaw was ripped completely over. It was kind of laying to the side, and he couldn't breathe, of course, so I had to do one of those cricothyroidotomies, they called it, where you take and put a hole right into the cricoid area of the trachea and put like a little pen. We used a pen, like a ballpoint pen. Take that and stick that in there so they could breathe, and he could breathe then, and we tried to keep him going until the choppers came and medevaced him out. So we finally, I remember he was still alive by the time he got to the chopper, and I still don't know. I don't know if he made it or not. But we did get a couple of the guys that weren't too severely injured off that chopper and back. It was, and then a lot of the guys from the fuel and the water ended up getting really bad burns on their legs, and we had to treat that. And then we stayed on that little island for the night, and we're basically isolated, and we're taking incoming, and there's no real place to go. We're just like on this little flat thing. There's a few little maybe trees in there, but it was pretty hairy through the night. I told everybody to take their boots off and try to dry their self off the best they could, and to keep from getting burned and stuff. But that was pretty hairy. But there were a number of incidences like that that you know, you just don't know how you made it. But from there, I have a couple pictures. This is a picture. It's not very clear right now. It's kind of faded, but this is some of the guys that were on that operation. It was kind of like sitting around while we were waiting to do some patrols. And there's some more of them in this large thing here that has some of the pictures of the guys, like this here. This is the corpsman. I don't know if you can see that with the reflection, but he's the one that replaced me and was killed. Okay, that's that. And there's another thing that happened, that when we were set up on that operation where we were along the road, this is kind of why we were hesitant to do too much with little kids, because we were like in a group like this, and it was real hot, and we were like underneath some shade, and the kids always come up and want some cigarettes or candy, you know, or something like that, and we usually give it to them, and then they say thank you and all that. But this one kid grabbed, not this particular group right here, but he grabbed one of the soldiers' M16s and opened fire and killed them all. That was on that particular operation. So you just never knew, you know, who the enemy was. In the VC, you just don't know. So then on the way, after that 6 months, then I was rotated back to Hill 37, which is this one I showed you a picture of before, the battalion aid station. And I spent a couple months there doing sick call, and on weekends, or not weekends, but it seemed like a weekend, but it was like usually sometime during the week, we would go down into the villages, and what the medical would do, this corpsman and the doctors, there was doctors on Hill 37 because it was a battalion aid station. We would hold sick call kind of down in the village, and that was like very popular with the villagers. They'd come up, and if they had a scratch or they'd have a cold, or you know, we'd fix them up. And I have pictures of us doing one of those patrols where we went down in the village, and of course you can see from one of these shots that I brought my guitar down there, and I played some good old rock and roll for the Vietnamese villagers, and they just loved it. I mean, the kids were going crazy listening to, you know, me playing the guitar. So it was that was part of the interesting fun times when we do that kind of a thing. And I think that it would really help out a lot as far as our relationships with the locals. You know, they were more apt to respect you and like you if you're helping them out. The kids get Band-Aids and candy, you know, and if they were sick, you know, we'd help them. So it's kind of a these are some other pictures of Hill 37 when we're building a shower. This is we took an old fuel tank from a jet or something, and that was filled with water, and then the heat from the day would warm it up, and they'd, you know, make like a little faucet underneath there, so at least we had water running into it. We'd have a shower, so that was pretty cool.
Is there Seabees that were attached to that, or was that just Marines?
That was just Marines. I guess you know, they figured out how to do it, and that was our shower there. So this was a picture of some of the guys that they'd bring up, like we call them gook bands. You know, they'd try to sing American rock and roll, and they'd come up and entertain us on the hill, and they'd, you know, say in their dialect try to sound like, you know, twist and shout, you know, you know, type of thing. But it was, and these are some other buddies down in, this was one of the naval hospitals down there near Da Nang. We went down and visited. This guy here on the far left is named Tom Marsh, and he was a corpsman that I found out when I was on Hill 65. I saw a package addressed to him, and the return address was from Granada Hills, which is where I grew up. It turned out that he went to the same high school that I went to, and he was stationed on the same hill in Vietnam, 30 miles or so from Da Nang, at the same area that I was. It was remarkable. So I kept in touch with him. He lives in Simi Valley, Tom Marsh. But he was actually, turned out, he went into to be a male nurse. So then, these are some other pictures of these guys, the crazy guys. We call him Madman because he looks like a madman.
Remember his name?
Can't remember his name. Mad Dog. We called him Mad Dog. Mad Dog.
Did you ever have any R&R when you were?
Yeah, after I got back on Hill 37, that's this hill, that was after 6 months, so they said, okay, do you want to go on R&R? And I said, oh, that'd be cool. And they said, well, you can go to Hawaii, you can go to Japan, Bangkok, I think Thailand or something like that, Bangkok, Thailand, and Australia. And I always want to go to Australia, but my girlfriend was going to meet me in Hawaii, so I went to Hawaii. Went to Hawaii and did some surfing, and it was great. I felt like I was, I was so relaxed when that was over with. But then I had to go back.
What was that like?
Going back?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was rough. I remember while I was over there, I think it was like around the 4th of July or something, and they were fireworks. Somebody just threw a bunch of firecrackers, and I hit the ground. It was like an automatic instinct. I was down underneath a car. It was like, and I was down. And she goes, what's wrong? But it just shows you how you're still wired. So then I went back, and then they said they wanted me to go out on this patrol because you get this feeling like you're through with the combat, and then they said that they wanted me to go out because they were having trouble out on this, the corpsmen were getting killed or something else, crazy thing. So I had to go back out, and that was the worst because you got back from R&R, and you're kind of like, I'm at least in the rear now, fairly much in the rear. And this wasn't exactly the rear, but it was working your way towards the rear. And then you have to go out on another patrol. So then I spent some time on Hill 37, and we played guitars and entertained the troops there too. So it wasn't all bad, we still had time to do stuff. And then finally my orders came through for the real rotation to the rear. That was kind of like the intermediate rotation. Then I went from Hill 37 to the 1st Engineer Battalion. That was the 1st Engineer Battalion. And that was further out, away from all the craziness that was going out, further away from Da Nang, the operations and the shootings and stuff. And there I was working in a battalion aid station for the Engineer Battalion. And I did more of the health records and holding sick call and things like that. This is kind of a picture of some of the crazy guys. We pinned cotton on this guy's backside. He looks like he's got a little tail and everybody's cracking up. He didn't even know he had it on there. And there's me behind the desk there. But then we went to the beach. The beach was only about 2 blocks away. So we were able to go over there on the weekend, when we weren't really busy, and play guitars. We even had a surfboard over there and tried to surf on these little waves over there. This was a picture of me at in the hooch in my rack, and just laying there. It's kind of blurry, but you can see it a little bit. And this is me standing outside the hooch. And this is a picture of, I think this is looking down towards, they call it Marble Mountain, which was further north than Da Nang. And we went through there. I think this is one of the villages through there. And then this is, again, the beach there. So while I was at the 1st Engineer Battalion, that was probably my last month or two in country. And you put up the short timer calendars, you know, and you start marking off the days. And I ended up rotating back home on the 23rd. I got home on the 23rd of December of 1969.
So you left on the 23rd and you arrived on the 23rd because of the...
Yeah, I left on actually New Year's Eve of the year before. So then I got back on December 23rd before Christmas. And I landed at El Toro, and my folks, I called up, it was in the middle of the night, and I said, I'm home, you know. And I remember I got off that plane and I kissed the ground. I just got down on the ground, kissed the runway, said, I'm home, thank God, you know, I'm home. And I was one of the lucky guys, because that was a Marine base. And I heard of a lot of guys that when they came home, they were, especially my brother-in-law said that people spit at them. And they just didn't treat Vietnam vets very good. But I was welcome home. I had the VFW there with donuts and coffee, and they were all welcoming me, you know, thank you for your service and everything. And I sat there, and there was a Christmas tree already up at this Marine base, and I sat there, and it was one of the most emotional times, you know, just feeling the freedom, you know, being away from all that, and especially during Christmas. It was just the best Christmas of my life, you know, being home. So, this other plaque here, I'll explain this, is a certificate of commendation I got from the Marine Corps that basically says that I was doing the work of a senior corpsman, and it kind of explains some of the duties that I had, that I was doing things that were outside of my MOS, so to speak. And I was kind of proud of that. And then this is the plaque that they give you for from Vietnam, 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. This is the unit I was with. So then I came back home. I changed from business major. I was in medicine for 4 years, and I said, you know, I like medicine now, so I was going to go pre-med. So I changed my major to medicine, pre-med, and went back to Pierce, and ended up at Cal State Northridge, got my degree, and couldn't get into vet school. I ended up working for a veterinarian, and so I decided I wanted to be a vet, because I thought that'd be cool. So went to work for him while I was going through school, and I tried to get into vet school, which is really hard. It's harder to get into vet school than it is to get into medical school. And so I tried twice to get into UC Davis, and they said that you're qualified, you know, you worked for a veterinarian, you got a B average, and you know, you got all the qualifications, but we can't take you. We've got 100 qualified. We have 1,000 qualified applicants, and we can only take 100. So I spent 2 years trying to get into the school and didn't do it. So I went to work for a pharmaceutical company, and it turned out that that turned out to be a really good job. I did that for 31 years with Bristol Myers Squibb. Ended up retiring a couple years ago, and have a wonderful family, 2 children that are grown up now, my son Michael and daughter Ann, and my wife Pauline. My son's up in Oregon, and my daughter's in Santa Barbara.
Now, Pat, you've talked to me about when you met Pauline and how her brother was in the military or in the Army as well.
Right.
Maybe you want to talk about when you met her and how much after you'd gotten back and all that.
Well, I went back to Pierce, and it's really crazy was that my mom enrolled me in these classes because I was still in Vietnam, and she enrolled me in all these classes, and one of them was political science class. So, of course, being back from Vietnam, I was looking for women. And so I'm standing outside political science class and looking in. And I see this nice-looking lady, and I said, ah. So I went and sat next to her, and we struck up a conversation. Never asked her out. We got to be really good friends through that class. And I didn't ask her out till the last week of school. And we ended up dating after that, and I ended up getting engaged and marrying her. But like Scott said, it's her brother was in Vietnam the same time I was, and she knew what I was going through. And I think it was a big help to have somebody to talk to when you get back from an experience like that. If you hold it inside and you don't have anyone to talk to, it just festers and gets worse and worse. And I used to come back from our date, we'd go to the show or something and pour out my soul to her. And she'd listen. That's all she did was listen and encourage me. And I think that was so important to keep my head screwed on the right way, And like I say, we ended up getting married in '73. So I dated her for like 3 years before we married. And here we are.
Still married after all these years?
Yeah, 35 years.
What do you take from your experience? I know you discussed your faith. What else did you take from your experience?
Well, I think the main thing it did was I grew up, for one. Matured a lot. It kind of put my mind where it should have been. I think that it's very important for kids to get away and do something. Not necessarily go to war, but to go to Peace Corps or something, because when you're out of high school and you're supposed to know what you want to do, you don't. And I think it's so important that they should have something for them to do, like Peace Corps or something like that, where they can find, so the old expression, find yourself, but you're finding yourself. And in other ways, you're going to end up going from here to here to here to here before you really know what the heck you're going to accomplish, But it slanted me in the right direction. It changed my whole focus on my life. I went from business to medicine, and then the pharmaceuticals, and ended up making that my career. And I think it's just my whole attitude towards life now is different. It's not like something that happens. It doesn't really bother me. It's like it doesn't bother me as much as maybe it would have before. You don't have that tendency to get depressed and go into a tailspin as easy, because you have all those other experiences that kind of make you grow up and see what life is really about. And you see all the poverty and things that are going on in other parts of the world that we're so lucky we have here. We are such a fortunate country that we should,